Everyone, my name is Michelle Scott Duncan, and I'm coming to you today because I have so much to share about my life and how it can help every one of you. I'm going to go back to my childhood and kind of start so you know who I am, where I've been, and why I feel like I can share so much of my life experience with you to help it better your life. So growing up, I had a pretty normal childhood. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad was retired military. And when you're a child, you just think everything's great. And then when you get a little bit older, you start to realize when things aren't going right in your life. And you start to realize that mom and dad maybe what you thought was happy in their life and they hid it so well, maybe aren't. And that was kind of my life. I grew up a pretty smart kid. I played the viola. I was an honor roll student. Pretty happy, pretty normal childhood. And then the teens came along and my life really spiraled out of control. I started realizing that my mother and father had actually a pretty unhealthy relationship. And my father was a functioning alcoholic. Did not know that as a kid. Didn't see that. Didn't see the signs. But I started seeing that when you become a teenager, you kind of start having your eyes open to the real world. So as a teenager, I really started to see the dysfunction in my family and my life, and came to the realization that my father didn't really want my younger sister and I. We had an older brother and sister that were kind of like the family that they thought they were going to have and be done. So lo and behold, 12 years after my older sister comes me, and then I had a younger sister, and she and I were very close in age. And well, things got bad when I became a teenager, and I started seeing my father drink a lot. And my older siblings, I started to see a lot of their dysfunction. My sister Lorraine was an alcoholic, and my brother was an alcoholic, and my mother never really drank, which was a blessing because it would have really made my life even worse as a teenager, which, let me tell you, it wasn't good. I started to see my father get drunk and pass out, and every time I turned around, he was swearing, using the Lord's name in vain. And we were, in his words, our mother's children. He kind of dissociated with us a lot. I don't remember him ever being at any of my functions as a child, whether it was a track meet or a viola performance or award ceremonies or anything like that. It was always my mother. But growing up, my mom was great for us as a young child. But when it became the teen life, we started to become very rebellious, and we partied a lot, my younger sister and I. We became what my older brother and sister were, which was dysfunctional. And then my mom and dad ended up divorcing when I was 15 years old, and my life literally spiraled out of control. I went from this really awesome, great kid who wanted to please my teachers and get good grades to feeling completely lost. I turned to alcohol myself. I turned to pot. I turned to anything that would stop the pain of the dysfunction that was happening in my life. My mom, she reverted back to wanting to be a young teenage person herself. Even though she was in her 40s, she was trying to find something that she lost, and she turned to, young men. And she didn't know how to really support my sister and I very well, and she was gone a lot because she was dating people. And I, like I said, I turned to alcohol for comfort. And by the time I was probably 16 years old, I was at every party I could be at. I got drunk probably 2 to 3 times a week. I got stoned all the time. I completely lost who I was. And, gosh, I'm sorry, my left eye is watering. So it took me a long time to figure out, after I dropped out of school and I got a GED, who I was. I wasn't Michelle, the smart, intelligent, uh, honor roll student. I was now a dropout with a GED who got a job waitressing. And that became my support system for financial living for a while. And then I kind of started dating this guy that was a bit of a loser, because what example did I have? I didn't know what love was. I picked the wrong people. And then the time I was 21 years old, I met my first husband and I had a son at 22. Well, that relationship didn't last because I picked the same pattern that I had grown up with. I picked an alcoholic. And I was divorced within a period of 3 years after my son was born. And I was still waitressing and trying to figure out my life. Started kind of the same pattern that my mother showed me when I was a teenager, which was dating different people and doing the best that I could to try to raise my son as a single parent without very much help. And how is this going towards where I'm at in my life now is going to show you all that no matter what your circumstances are, and I'm going to go through my journey here with you, that you can overcome anything. You guys, I never even flew in an airplane till I jumped out of it at 18 years old. I was always very ambitious and very determined in my younger years, and I found that again in myself. It took a long time. The teen years were very, very hard on me, and I really had to figure out who I was. I got lost, and I don't mean just a little bit. I got really, really lost in the drug and the pot scene in my life, and it took a long time for me to come out of that and have faith in myself and believe in myself. So, jumping back to my 20s again, I divorced my first husband, and then I actually got a job, a really cool job, working on a boat, whale watching and going back and forth to Victoria. And I felt spiritual at that point. I found a spiritual side of myself, and I really connected with wildlife. And in my 20s, I still was trying to figure out who I was. I was actually, after my son Billy was born and getting a little bit older, I realized I needed to work hard to support him and be a better person for my kid. And I couldn't be this wild 20-something-year-old and just move around boyfriend to boyfriend. It wasn't the life I wanted for me or for my son. So how am I going to go about becoming a better person and then becoming this just a waitress? I thought, gosh, what can I do? Well, I became a dental assistant, and I started having medical insurance and dental, obviously, that was covered, and retirement. So thank God I stepped up in life and I started feeling better about myself. And the time I was 30, I started to kind of become more of a responsible person and make better life choices for myself. And I thought, gosh, what can I do to even have a house? I need to have my house and for my son and I. And then I got in this program, and it was through Kitsap County Housing Authority that I built my own house for my son and I. And during this time frame of me growing into a more responsible person and being determined and not letting my life of who I was reflect on anything that was moving forward in my life, I was always ready to do whatever it was going to take to further me. And having the attitude of you're not any less than anybody else. Money doesn't define people. Who they are in their heart and in their soul is the true person that you ought to be and you ought to respect in others. And I've always kind of looked at people like that. I've never been really influenced by what they had in their bank account. It was who they were that most impressed me. And so in my 30s, when I was working as a dental assistant, I always had a desire to have a grandfather in my life because my father being military, my mom was from England. And when we settled in this area, we had no relatives. I only had my Nana growing up. And my grandfathers both were dead, and my dad's parents were in Kentucky. So I only met them one time in my life. So I always was wanting to have like a grandfather figure because I never grew up with that. And where I'm going with this story is going to lead into part of the person that I am today. So when I was a dental assistant, I kind of got into my Christian phase of life again. I was raised Episcopalian, and that was part of my spiritual base in life, and Christian base. And part of what kept me going, even in the dark times, is because I never lost my faith in God and a higher power. I'm trying not to cry here because my next part of the story is so much of who I am. and part of why I want to share this story and how important it really is to never give up and always believe. Sorry, folks. So I was praying to God. There was two men at the dental office. I loved them so much. One's name was Norman, and honestly, I can't remember the other man's name, but I just adored them. And I was like praying to God. I'm like, God, please bring this grandfather figure in my life. I just feel like I've missed it so much. And sorry. So I was praying about a man named Norman. I love Norman so much, and every time he'd come in, he'd always talk to me and tell me how pretty I was. And he was 80, I think Norman was probably 87 or 86 at the time. And he would tell me about his life, and he was gosh, what was he? He was one of the highest. He was only not a general. Oh my golly, I can't think. Well, he was the highest position in the Army, above captain, not a commander. Shoot, I can't. I just want to tell my story so much about him. Anyway, so he was a very high-ranking officer in the Army. And he also was in the Pentagon. He worked for the Pentagon. Never married, never had children. And I was praying to God that Norman and I would get to know each other and he would be a part of my life. And so when I was coming back from lunch, I was just praying to God. I'm like, God, please just let Norman be a part of my life. Let him be my grandfather figure I never had. So I get back to work. And there was Norman. He was our next patient. And after the procedure that we had done on him was over with, Norman goes, well, how would you and your boyfriend like to join me and watch the doctor in the play tonight? Or not that night, but over the weekend. I would love for you guys to be my guest. My heart jumped a beat because I was so excited that I had the opportunity to spend time with Norman and get to know him. And after that time that we spent together, we developed this relationship that was so wonderful. I would go over to his house with my son at the time, who was 12, I believe, or 11, and we would bring pizza and we'd have ice cream, and I'd call him up on the phone, or he'd call me up on the phone, and he would encourage me. He would tell me I could do anything in my life, that I had to be the squeaky wheel that always was heard, and that I can do anything that I wanted to do in my life. I had to really think about that. I'm like, gosh. And he goes, well, what would you do if you were a dental assistant? I was like, oh, I don't know. I need to really think about that. And I thought about it for a while, and we had conversations with each other. And then finally I came up with massage therapist. And I'm like, Norman, I think I want to be a massage therapist. And the reason why I wanted to be a massage therapist is because I love people. I'm strong. I'm physically able to massage people. And I think that would be a great job. So, with one of our many conversations, he goes, I think you should really become a massage therapist. And I'm like, okay. Well, not giving it a whole lot of thought, and as time had gone on, my father, who was still alive at the time, had become ill with congestive heart failure. And Norman actually had become ill in that same time frame that my father actually became hospitalized. And I had called Norman up on the phone like I normally did over the weekend. And I was like, how are you doing, Norman? And I could tell he was sick. He wasn't well. And my father, being in the hospital in a town that was an hour away, the hospital actually needed me to drive some x-rays of my father's heart to this town. And so I had picked up the x-rays, and I stopped by Norma's house to bring him some medicine because I wanted him to be well. Well, on my way to the hospital, on the way to the hospital, I had stopped and seen Norman. And I could just tell he wasn't doing very well, and he had a runny nose, and he was very sick. And I gave him some orange juice and some grapefruit seed extract drops and some vitamins. And I said, I want you to take these. I want you to be better. And I have to go. And I felt really horrible that night. I didn't hug him before I left, but one of the best and most amazing gifts that Norman did for me before I left, he had written out 3 checks, and he goes, I want you to take these in case something happens to me. They were 3 checks for me to go to massage school in the full amount that it cost for me to go. I took them and I said, thank you, Norman. Thank you so much. This means the world to me that you would do this for me. And then I left, and I was just thinking to myself, I really hope that he feels better. And then the weekend had gone by, and I went to work on Monday. And I saw that there was a little rose pot sitting on the counter. And I thought, oh, those are cute little roses. I wonder who those are for, not thinking anything of it. Well, the neighboring dentist knew Norman because his friend actually rented the little cabin out on the property to him. And the neighboring dentist had told a coworker that Norman had died over the weekend. And I got pulled aside at lunchtime, and I was told that he had passed away. Well, that was a very sad day for me, of course. I had gone to the school that week, and I had given them the checks to pay for me to go to school. And I went to school, and I completed my massage therapy course after 14 and a half months. And on graduation day, I had a picture of my father, who had actually passed away in the time that I was at school, and a picture of Norman. Those 2 in my hand. One, sadly, didn't know how to tell me he was ever proud of me or he loved me, and only knew how to express his own accomplishments. The other person, who I never knew very long in my life, I feel came along in my life to fill a purpose and make me realize that I am a good person. I do deserve good things in life. Your past doesn't define who you are, and you can do anything that you set your mind to. On that day, I was so proud of myself because I wasn't the high school dropout. I wasn't the kid that had a GED. I was now a person that believed in myself and had somebody else who believed in me. And I finished it with a B average. That was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. But I was going to make Norman proud and my dad. So when I started massage therapy, I started realizing when I worked on people, I could start seeing lights on people. Like I saw white light flash on people. I was like, gosh, what's wrong with my eyes? I don't know if is this normal? I wonder if other massage therapists see this. And I realized after time, I started having this amazing gift. So I started seeing white lights. And then a few years after I started seeing the white lights, I started to see purple lights on people and the white lights. And then as time went on, I started seeing blue lights and pink lights. And so it's taken me years to try and figure this out. Here I am almost 18 years into my practice, and I still trying to figure it out. I think it's obviously some kind of energy, and I think it's called photoneutrons that my eyes, for some reason, can see in the lower lights. And through this time in my journey as a massage therapist, I also have become a Reiki master. And also, I also have a gift of knowing. I have the ability to sometimes get messages on the other side. I didn't really know who I was and like truly know who I was until I hit my 40s. And 8 years into this journey of my 40s, being a healer and a Reiki master, I've learned so much about myself, about people, about energy, about believing in yourself, about overcoming so many things when you just manifest. I do believe in the book, The Secret, 100%. I have, manifested so many incredible things in my life. And I'm going to teach everybody how to do that, how we can become who we are today. You guys, I'm 48 years old. I feel like I look pretty amazing for my age. I know this isn't the best camera ever, but I have so much to offer with health, about taking care of yourself nutritionally, meditating, how we can walk ourselves through really terrible times in our lives and overcome them, and visually overcome them, and believing in yourself in this journey, because life is not easy. I don't care how much good you have in your life. You're going to have a lot of terrible things that are going to happen to you in your life too, but it's a matter of how we move forward, you guys. I'm going to tell you a little something about my life. I didn't make very good choices relationship-wise, and I literally went through 3 marriages before I found my last husband, who I've actually known since grade school. And I didn't marry him until after 3.5 years because I was so scared I was going to screw up along the way and make another bad choice. And here I am almost 8 years with him. I love him. I'm very lucky to have him. But when I met him, he was in a bad place in his life. He lost everything, but he was so successful. And I never stopped believing. I never stopped even believing in the person that I knew that he was. And I manifested so many things, and I helped visualize so many things. And now we have an amazing life together. We have a 6-figure income. We have a beautiful house. We live on a property that's in a small little town called Squim. And we make really good money together. And that's because I never stopped believing. Never one time did I ever stop believing in this journey called life, and you can become anything that you want to be. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to propose to all of you, I'm going to have 3 things that I'm going to work on. Number 1, I'm going to start manifesting with all of you. And I want us to go on this journey together to be light workers and people that can move past anything, because you cannot live in the past, number 1. Number two, you have to have forgiveness, but you have to make peace with the forgiveness. Otherwise, it is totally not worth forgiving. Because if you don't make peace with forgiveness, it's not totally forgiven. Number three, do not define yourself by your past. Every single day, and I mean this, every single day, you can move forward and become the person that you want to be. So if you want to follow me, I'd really like that. And I wouldn't even just like it, I'd love it, because I'm ready to be that person that's going to be heard. Remember my name. I'm Michelle Scott Duncan, and I'm here to help you move beyond anything that has got you stuck. We're going to become light beings together, and we're going to manifest the best life that we can possibly have. And don't ever doubt yourself. The universe is there for you. There is abundance in this universe, and all you have to do is believe. Thanks, guys. Keep a watch out for me. Hit follow, share it, do whatever you want to do. We're going to do this together. Have an amazing, incredible day.